We hope you guys had an amazing day. There was a lost tote bag that someone found. If you're missing your tote bag, it has a set of keys in it. I think that's very important. It's with Debbie, so if that's yours, just meet her. She's over here. Okay, let's get this started. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
My name is Yoko Kelly. I'm a senior at Instituto Mexico-Americano del Noroeste, and this is my third year attending the U-Town meeting, but second year as a conference moderator.
And my name is Angelica Mara-Segan. I'm a senior at John Muir School. This is my third time attending the Youthtown meeting, as well as my second time as a moderator.
Angelica and I actually became closer friends after last year's WorldLink Youthtown meeting debrief workshop. You could say that we are BFFs. You know what's crazy?
What?
How we finish each other's
sandwiches.
That's what I was gonna say. Anyway, we're here today to invite you to this year's post-Youthtown meeting workshop this Saturday, January 24th. At this debrief workshop, you get to share your reflections about today's experience and begin to create innovative project or youth initiative with your fellow Youthtown meeting delegates. Space is incredibly limited, so please make a reservation as soon as possible. More information can be found in the flyer included in each of your tote bags.
At this time, we would like to remind everyone that it's important for all mobile phones,
radios and pagers,
and remote-controlled toys to be turned off or placed on silent mode. In addition, everyone received an evaluation sheet when you entered the theater. Please be sure to complete it, and most importantly, let your voice be heard and vote on next year's theme. Each of your votes helps us identify the topics that are most important to you. You each received a pen in your tote bag. However, if you're missing one, you can quietly raise your hand and a volunteer will come to you. Please keep the paper shoveling to a minimum.
Now let's get this closing plenary started.
Again, thank you all for being here and immersing yourself in this wonderful experience today. We would now like to welcome our friends Julio Serrano from St. Augustine High School and Frida Aguilar from the San Diego School of Performing Arts.
Hello everyone, my name is Julio Serrano, and I first had the pleasure of experiencing WorldLink at last year's Youthtown meeting, where I attended as a delegate.
My name is Frida Aguilar, and I'm excited to be at my third annual Youthtown meeting. Welcome to today's closing plenary, Essential Collaborations for Peaceful, Democratic, and Just Future.
As WorldLink interns, one of our favorite involvements with this program was being researchers and editors to the annual WorldLink Reader. This reader is an online resource we produce that opens your mind to the different ways in which you can understand and solve some of the pressing issues we address today. It was great to see the informative speeches and sessions take form because we felt that they brought the content of the reader to life.
So today, if there are any specific issues that you are eager to learn more about, we invite you to access the annual WorldLink Reader, available on the WorldLink's website.
At this time, we would like to turn it over to our first presenter of the closing plenary, Mr. Ted Miles. Mr. Miles has worked for Catholic Relief Services since 2005 as the Relationship Manager for Youth and Religious Education. He oversees Call to Witness, an international program that provides youth with global first-hand experiences to work for solidarity, peace, and justice on various issues. Please welcome Mr. Ted Miles.
Thank you, Julio and Frida, and thank you, Jorge, for your wonderful moderation, and to all of the leaders today. This has really been a very inspiring event for me. I'd like to begin by asking that you indulge me in an activity, and those of you who are in the sessions did see this. I'd like you to fold your hands and notice which thumb is on top and which pinky is on the bottom. For me, it is my left thumb, my right pinky. Now fold it so that the other thumb is on top and the other pinky is on the bottom, and notice how that feels. For many of us, it's probably a little uncomfortable, but try this. Now fold your arm and notice which arm is on top. For me, it is always my left arm. Now fold it so that the other arm is on top. And notice how that feels. I did that activity for a reason. I think sometimes entering into this work of peace and justice, well, the reality is it's going to be much like folding your arm the wrong way. It is going to be extremely uncomfortable. When you enter into these issues, you're going to discover realities that are deeply disturbing. When you enter into the injustice of the world, you're going to be pained, you're going to be disturbed, you're going to be broken. And then yet, even though, despite the discomfort, even though the discomfort is there, somehow something keeps driving us forward. I oftentimes just call that the will and the power of the human spirit. Sometimes it's faith, sometimes it's hope, sometimes it's just belief in the goodness of the world that we could be different. That's the kind of work that I see each day at CRS. It's an agency that works in 91 different countries around the world, and it's an agency that tries to respond to the whole person through a process of integral human development. In other words, every person matters, every community matters, and we work in a way where we try to build sustainable long-term change. And we do this through a couple of principles that I'd like to illustrate through a story. And it's a story of great discomfort. You see, we support a program in Huancayo, Peru, that is being spearheaded by a bishop who lives down there, Bishop Pedro Jimeno Barreto. Now, when Bishop Pedro was assigned to the Diocese of Peru, or Huancayo, Peru, he had to pass through the 8th most polluted city in the world, La Arroyo, Peru. Now, La Arroyo has become that way because of an ore mining company, Dorun, had gone down there, left the laws and the regulations of the United States, went into Peru and just set up. Now, a good thing for the people of La Arroyo initially because it provided jobs. However, without any regulation towards the environment or human rights work or workers' rights, the people of La Arroyo eventually suffered greatly. Bishop Pedro, when he passed through there, would see mounds of black dirt. He would see across the hills and the mountains this white dust that looked like snow, but it was really acid dust that had come from the pollution of the mines. And the river that ran through La Arroyo was now completely dead. And the color of it was this dark, crusty brown. Bishop Pedro, when made it his first pastoral responsibility to begin to just learn the stories of the people of La Arroyo. And as he journeyed and walked with them, he learned about no pay or little pay. He learned about long hours, little compensation. He learned about health and many other issues of violence and intimidation through the mining company. So Bishop Pedro went to St. Louis to try to institute some help and bring some help back down to La Arroyo. And he utilized the help of St. Louis University. St. Louis sent their science department down there to do a study, and they found that 90% of the people in La Arroyo were living with 10 times the amount of lead in their bodies than the recommended levels of the World Health Organization. People were dying, children were being born with lead poisoning. Bishop Pedro made it his first goal as a bishop to shut down that mine. And sure enough, 3 years later, he succeeded in doing so. And lo and behold, people began to, at least in some respect, reclaim a little bit of their own dignity through that. Well, gradually, as Bishop Pedro began to work with the government and the leaders of the mining company, they began to look for more sustainable ways to try to open that. Our delegation, through this called the witness trip, in this delegation, somebody asked him, so what can we do to journey with you in this, to share the story? Bishop Pedro ever so humbly said 3 things. He said the first thing is build awareness. What I was so inspired though with respect to Bishop Pedro is that he made the first step of becoming aware by entering into the story of the people of La Arroyo. And let me tell you, it was an uncomfortable position to be in, but he went nonetheless. You see, Bishop Pedro's life was even threatened numerous times by people who owned the mining company. But nonetheless, that never deterred him from helping the people. The first lesson, I think, in any work of peace building is the willingness to accompany other people, to enter into their stories, to learn about people's realities, and to be there in both the pain and the joy. And that's when people begin to understand that their lives matter. You see, that's important because the first step in healing the wounds of violence, sometimes for many people, is learning how to believe that their lives matter. The second thing he said, build awareness, accompany. The second thing he said, whenever you denounce evil, be sure to announce good news. You see, after the mine closed, Bishop Pedro was in the uncomfortable position again of helping people to try to recreate their lives. But with what? The mining company, the primary source of their income and their jobs, was no longer there. And so all of a sudden, Bishop Pedro had to look for other partners to try to create new sustainable livelihoods and to bring in business and to bring in opportunities for people to engage and for people to rebuild their lives. Awareness and accompaniment also offer realistic hope. Don't just denounce evil, but also build justice. Peace, we often say, is the absence of war and physical violence. That's one way of looking at it. But that doesn't necessarily mean things often change. Peace, though, is also the promotion of justice. The two have to go hand in hand. Bishop Pedro was able to get rid of the structural violence of La Arroyo, but then he had to find a way of promoting justice and by creating new opportunities for the people of La Arroyo. And he did that through partnership. And he did that by offering realistic hope. And then the third thing he said, and this was the only thing he said in English, and he pointed to our delegation and he said, "You Americans must change your lifestyle." Talk about being uncomfortable. You know, the reality is, I don't do anything in La Arroyo to create that situation. But I do have a cell phone, and I have a computer, and I have a television, and I have a lot of other nice gadgets at times that have precious minerals that were mined in other countries around the world with no checks and balances about human rights or the impact on the environment. Part of what we try to do through CRS and part of what we all need to try to do as peace builders is to recognize our indirect and our direct contributions towards the injustices of the world, ever humbly so, and then work to change first ourselves and then those around us. One of the best things that we can do is look at our own lives. Do we live simply? Do we buy justly? Do we buy with an awareness of, or do we make decisions with an awareness of how it impacts other people? And in the end, do we then become that voice for other people who don't have the voice, who've been oppressed, or who have been pushed down and squashed? Bishop Pedro, for me, kind of mirrors the way that mirrors a healthy approach to peace building. He mirrors the work of CRS around the world, and he certainly has become an inspiration for me. And so that perhaps one day, even though it's uncomfortable at the beginning, we can then begin to do this long enough, and it's going to feel more comfortable. I think the more we commit and enter into the difficult, complex situations of the world, we begin to find ourselves changed and ourselves moved into a way that really affects change. Let me just close by giving you one demonstration. I'd like the first row to please stand up. If this room, there's about 700 people in the room, if this room represented the world, this is the number of people that would have a college education. 1% of the room. You may sit down. I'd like the first 5 rows to stand up. If this room were the world, this number of people would own about 50% of the wealth, leaving the remaining 50% to be split between all of you. You may sit down. When we look at those kinds of realities, it does indeed make us uncomfortable. But that's the first step in peace building. It's the willingness to enter into the structural violence, the individual violence, the systemic violence, the injustices, and let it break our hearts, so that we then become moved to be the peace builders. We enter in with other people, and we begin to change these realities. And we begin to advocate for education for all people, especially women. And we begin to recognize that wealth isn't just meant for me, it's meant to be shared with all. That doesn't necessarily mean that we all have to make the same amount of money or something like that, but it does mean that the disparity that we see causing so much violence in the world is unacceptable. And then we move towards a change that is rooted in relationship and respect, mutual respect, and the acknowledgement of the dignity of all people. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Our next presenter is Wendy Sternberg, founder of Genesis at the Crossroads, a nonprofit organization that conducts peace-building work through artistic, arts-integrated education, and humanitarian activities. Initiatives worldwide emphasizing the healing aspects of the arts and the power of the arts to transform our worlds. Ms. Sternberg forged national and international partnerships with more than 35 institutions in 4 continents, and founded Saffron Caravan, a program that unites musicians from Iran, Afghanistan, Cuba, Morocco, Israel, India, and the United States for cross-cultural collaborative performance and educational programs. Please welcome Wendy Sternberg.
Thank you. It's really a privilege to be here, and I'm really so moved and honored by all of you. I have never spoken to a room where I could see the back row, so this is a whole new experience for me. I was just saying that to Mark before. I want to thank Debbie Martinez. I think we can all give her a round of applause for all of her hard work. And equally importantly, I'd like to thank all of you for showing up as young people committed to this incredible conversation around human rights and violence and world transformation. We can't do this work alone, and it's one thing that if I could drive home that point, it's exactly that it's such a vast world, and I think the profound exercise you just did of having people stand up and sit down gives us a sense of discrepancy and injustice and things that are so disproportionate, it's mind-boggling. So I'd like to start off with something that profoundly touched me when I first started on my journey. I was happily going along as a physician, practicing medicine on the front line of internal medicine in Chicago, taking care of different people from all different backgrounds and socioeconomic conditions, understanding that my arts interests were never getting their oxygen in some respect, and I was filling in along the margins. And then I took a course on self-expression and leadership, and one of the conversations we had was about filters, and I shared this with the groups that I've had today. And it's a little bit like if somebody were to ask you to put on rose-colored glasses, you know, for a little while you'd see that, you know, people's skin would be a little pink or tinged or a little different looking, and over time, that would fade away and it would just be the way the world looks. It looks a little pink. And it becomes somewhat like a truth, that the world's a little pink and this is the way I see it and that's just how it is. And when the person was finished speaking about that, he said, turn to the person sitting next to you and let them know what you're seeing, what you hear, what you're noticing. And randomly, sitting next to me, or not so coincidentally, was an Arab man, and I'm Jewish. And the two of us started realizing we had filters about each other's cultures, our ethnic backgrounds, our histories, and a lot of this was based on complete and total ignorance. Except the problem was we came from educated families, and we were both very educated, in fact had graduate degrees from very good universities, had come from families that deeply cared about the arts and culture and education at every level. So it was a very confronting thing for me to actually recognize my own self-righteousness and my own lack of knowledge about another another community, but having a lot of opinions based on ignorance. And out of that moment, I actually saw that we have to do something about this. And the question was, how do we do that? And what vehicle do we use and what medium do we use? And I started to look into my own life. I dance, I sing, I played the flute at one point in time, took that all the way through college. And I realized there's something very profound and engaging about the arts. First of all, they're creative and they're neutral. And there's a lot of things we bring people together around that are actually just creating more division. So the arts are a convener. They're also a universal language, and they allow us to come together with or without lyrics and music in many different disciplines to work across this incredible divide that if we look at what's gone on with ISIS and ISIL in Nigeria and in the past with Rwanda and Bosnia and Cambodia and just fill in the blank, we're in a hideous, perpetual cycle of violence. And it's hit our own shores with September 11th and Ferguson and other such things. And as I've been on my own journey, I've constantly reminded people in other countries that America has its own war zones, and some of them are just 7 miles from me in Chicago. And so I decided to use art in a cross-cultural collaborative fashion to engage people across this barrier and to look at ways to convene them. And more recently, I wrote a piece that I shared with the United Nations to add arts and culture to part of their Sustainable Development Goals, which were sadly left out of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'd like to read the first 2 paragraphs to you, because I believe that they address why art is so important and why it is so deeply connected to this conversation about healing the wounds of war and violence, and even particularly preventing the violence that causes the wound that needs the healing. Voice. As a universal language, art enshrines the human spirit. It intones the human heartbeat of our time as well as our past. As both the reflection and the mirror, art acts as the lens through which we can explore, examine, question ourselves, explain historic events, and face transgressions both as victim and perpetrator to ultimately embrace our humanity. The repository of our individual and collective memory, art's myriad form of expression allow us to provide testimony and bear witness. The arts form a multifaceted scaffold for our imagination, and one on which we can reimagine, process, and provoke. Art emboldens us as human beings and helps us both make and leave our indelible mark across generations for art's sake and for the sake of all humanity. Healing. A vital portal for human self-expression, art serves as our mortal oxygen for physical well-being and mental health. At times, the elixir which dulls and the salve which soothes our pain, the arts inoculate us and our brethren from further trauma. The balm for tragic and seemingly insurmountable suffering, the arts and artistic expression help us find our resolve and reclaim our resilience, without which we might and could otherwise implode. As an outlet for anger and fear, the arts loosen the shackles and chokehold of penetrating distress. As spectator and/or practitioner, the arts actively enable us to find release for such inner devastation and give us access to compassion and forgiveness. One could say, as the antidote to conflict, art is, and always will be, the best violence prevention program for the world in which any of us could invest. So this went on change.org thanks to my intern who's in her 20s, and circulated around the world and will be presented to the United Nations to add art and culture to the Sustainable Development Goals. And what I've learned in my work at Genesis at the Crossroads, working in 3 different divisions of arts and performance, mostly in music and peace building and visual art, in arts education, where we have taken programs to troubled schools in the Chicago public school area, and now are working on a boarding school for global leadership, engaging people with a curriculum with art thread through an interdisciplinary curriculum, and working in arts-based humanitarian work, bringing instruments to children in conflict zones where they could otherwise have a Kalashnikov in their hands, and look at ways that things that can go a destructive way can also go a creative way. And so here we are with all of you. And while I was on the 100th anniversary of World War I, convened with 59 other change makers in arts and global peace building, we came to realize in a session on the future generations that actually perhaps all we are doing with our own work is laying the groundwork for all of you to take on this torch and go forward. So a couple things to share. Why you, why now? And I think all of you are aware of the young woman Malala Yousafzai who won the Nobel Peace Prize from Pakistan. So here's a woman who's in her teenage years who had a head injury thanks to the Taliban, who goes on to take on the world. And I actually believe there's a Malala in each one of you. So be clear about who you are and what you're up to. Stay aligned with your high moral compass and beware of money and fame. They can lure you away from your mission in a very easy way. Vision, commitment, tenacity, and passion are really your keys to the kingdom, and I really mean that. And the passion in this room, although it's faded by the third session, I think has been there all throughout. Be bold with your ideas. I cold called the UN in 2005, and our artists were part of the UN 60th anniversary celebration. I knew no one at the UN at the time. Stretch yourselves. Go outside your comfort zones, experience people in the world, and most importantly, experience people and the world in their realities, not your own. Abandon your truths and recognize their limitations. There's no one truth. Embrace multiple perspectives and look at diversity. I had a Sri Lankan general and a former child soldier sitting next to me in a conflict resolution fellowship in Thailand who profoundly changed my life. Remember that there are people of all ages that can be your mentors. I'm being mentored by people who are in their teens and in their 20s. I'm an immigrant to technology and social media, unlike all of you. And most of all, share yourselves. I encourage you all to live out loud. And the other thing is remember, you have platforms. Mine are the Clinton Global Initiative, the Salzburg Global Seminars, and other communities of global peace builders, and in fact, this room. The other thing is that's really important. In the first opening plenary session, I found myself feeling a little tearful. I don't know if that happened to any of you. So allow yourselves to be moved by what you're doing, and sustain yourselves as you go through it. So I leave you all with the task and the torch. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sternberg. Our last presenter for today is Mark Wexler. Mr. Wexler found his vocational direction while working with street children in Durban, South Africa. He returned to San Francisco in 2006 to co-found the global anti-slavery organization, Not for Sale. This organization involves individuals in the abolitionist movement through a variety of grassroots initiatives and innovative new technologies. Since its launch, Not for Sale has provided in-depth services to over 6,000 survivors of human trafficking. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Mark Wexler.
Hey everyone, how you doing? Awesome. Almost there, aren't we? So, man, I always feel like I'm the party pooper because it's like, yeah, what do? I work to fight modern day slavery, human trafficking. And it just takes all the air out of the room. It's like, oh man. I just feel like I'm the guy who ruins the dinner party. And you know, that's the tough part, you know, that there is a reality in our world that we are slowly waking up to. Our culture, our society, and our economy, we're slowly waking up to this reality that forced labor, human trafficking, modern day slavery is still with us. It didn't go away. We wish it had, of course, but it didn't. In fact, I didn't realize it was still going on until I found out there was a restaurant in Berkeley, just across from San Francisco, where I was, that was the center of a human trafficking ring. This is back in 1999, that brought over 550 women and girls from India into Berkeley. Folks, it's not just an over there issue. This happens even in our own communities. Now, I could depress you. The reality is that this is the second leading crime in the world today. It has surpassed the illegal arms trade. This nets traffickers $150 billion, that's a B, each year. That's more than Google, Nike, and Starbucks combined in a year. Think about that. Again, I can continue to depress you. There's 36 million people ensnared in this horrible reality through force, fraud, or coercion. That's 0.5% of the entire world's population, still held in bondage today. Again, I could depress you. But the truth is that there is incredible hope. There is incredible hope. And it's not for sale. It's not a government. It's not businesses. It's actually you. Okay, now you're doing the flip, right? You're like, not me. I don't want to be that person. It is you. It is absolutely you. I like to imagine everyone with an invisible tool belt. You've got one. And every day you go to school, every day you go to work, you are adding tools and resources to your tool belt. Now what matters is how you use those tools. One, you got to realize you have them. And then two, you need to use them. It's through the purpose of those tools and the expression of that. I think it's where your heart and your head meet, your vocation, your calling. It's through those things that is the expression of justice in the communities that you're in today and you will be a part of in the future. Now you might think, again, it might be a little freaky to think of yourself as a modern day abolitionist. Ooh, I don't know. You are, and we need you. We need you. And now let me just tell you 3 quick stories about some folks who represent this. They never thought that they were going to be modern day abolitionists. The woman who really inspired us to get Not For Sale off the ground, her name is Kru Nam. She lives in Thailand. And every day, she was an artist. So she had the artist toolkit. And every day she'd wake up, she'd walk across town to her art studio, and she'd see these kids on the streets, and she'd always wonder why there are all these kids on the streets. And so she would try to talk to them, but there was a language barrier, and there was these issues, and she couldn't figure out why she couldn't communicate, and she just ultimately couldn't figure out why the kids were on the streets. And so she did what any good artist should do. She used her skill set. And she really came up with she didn't realize it, she had stumbled upon a kind of a rudimentary form of art therapy. She brought her arts, her paints, her canvases, and we're talking about little kids. We're talking about 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 18. And instead of trying to communicate with words, they started to paint. And some of the most horrific images, exploitative images you could ever imagine started to come out on the canvas. That words had no justice to explain. And she realized, oh my gosh, this was her moment where she was awakened to a reality that she could not turn a blind eye to. And so she said, okay, this is my moment. We met her just weeks after that, and she had 13 kids that she had helped get out of some of the worst conditions you could ever imagine. See, there are men from around the world who travel to Thailand to exploit children. This is part of that dark reality. On the positive side, there are Kru Nams of the world who are working day and night to ensure that these kids are not held in these situations. Now, when we met Kru Nam, she had 13 kids and no plan. I got no kids and no plan, and I'm freaked out for myself. I can't imagine for her. but she had been gifted land in the north of Thailand. There was nothing there. And I'll never forget going there and seeing the kids sleeping on the ground with lean-to shacks, and we had committed to her that we're going to help. And we show up, we provide some funding, and we go home, and we raised enough funds. We went to our family and our friends. We said, family and friends, we need to help Trunam build a house for the kids. And we did. We raised enough funds to build that house. So we called up Trunam and said, Trunam, we got enough money to build that first house. And she said, great, guys, but guess what? Now I've got 57 kids. Okay, all right, well, we'll help you with this too. Second step, we need to extend our network of family and friends. So even my cousin got a call. And the one I don't like that much, just kidding, just kidding. We raised enough funds for that second house. Well, guess what? We call Trunam, and Trunam says, great, guys. You see where this is going? Great, guys. But now I've got nearly 100 kids. Like, oh my gosh, stop with this, Trunam. The reason why I talk about her is because she is an artist as a modern day abolitionist. Someone who's now come into our network of family and friends to support her is this goofy baseball player. His name's Jeremy Affeldt. He's a relief pitcher for the San Francisco Giants. There are kids now in northern Thailand that play every day on a court that he helped fund because when he first started working with us, he said, for every strikeout I throw, I'm going to donate $100 to help free kids around the world. See, now this is bringing it home. But again, a baseball player turned abolitionist. All right, see where I'm going with this? Think about yourself. Where are you going in your life, and how are you going to marry that with the cause of justice? Now, I was on a path that was about me. Me. I was in the business world. It was all about me. I was on path to make as much money as I possibly could for myself. It wasn't until I realized that there's a way to marry my skills with my compassion that can unleash a power that is beyond anything that we could ever imagine. What skills are you going to add to your tool belt? As you go through university, and I think as Ted just so eloquently pointed out with the exercise, you are part of the 1% of the world that will have the skills. So how do you then use your curiosity and your intelligence and your compassion to create incredible change in the world? I'm going to leave you with one last little story from Uganda. I was in Uganda, and I was at a group this size, and the girls started dancing up on the stage with pots on their head. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, the pots are going to fall. There was about 8 girls dancing around with pots, and I thought the pots were going to fall. And thankfully, after 5 minutes, the dance was done, and the pots did not fall. And a guy got up on stage, and he pointed at me and the Ugandan project leaders, and he said, leaders, I noticed that your eyes were large. You were worried that the pots were going to fall. Leaders, why are you worried about pots falling? They're ceramics. If they fall, break, we can clean them up. We can make them whole again the next day. That's the beauty of ceramics. But leaders, we cannot fix our society in one day. If our society breaks, it takes years and years and years and years. I share that because you are the leaders. And my challenge to you is to think about that tool belt and how will you use that to create incredible change that I know you can and will do within your spheres of influence. Thanks, everyone.
Let's give our closing panelists one last round of applause, please.
Now, to bring our conference to a close, we would like to introduce fellow WorldLink interns, Chase Garcia and Nicole Martindale. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chase Garcia, and I am currently a senior attending Scripps Ranch High School. This summer, I was an intern with the WorldLink program.
As was I. My name is Nicole Martindale, and I'm a sophomore attending Torrey Pines High School. One final reminder that before you leave today, be sure to complete your evaluation form and vote for next year's theme. Volunteers will collect these forms as you leave the theater.
As WorldLink interns this past summer, Nicole and I got an inside look and saw the true magnitude of work that goes in to making this day a reality. A day that would not have been made possible without the support from our generous donors and sponsors.
We would like to thank the Kimberly Godwin Charitable Gift Fund.
Thank you to the Serenity Grace Foundation.
Thank you to the Verizon Foundation.
Thank you to Stephen Strachan.
Thank you to Justine Darling, Catherine D. Nichols, and Dr. Robert Hitchcock.
And thank you to our newest supporters, Leslie and Marilyn Williamson.
Also, as host of today's conference, we would like to thank the John B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice at the University of San Diego's Kroc School of Peace Studies. Let's hear it.
We would also like to thank the volunteers, teachers, and chaperones who dedicated their time and effort to make this Youth Town meeting happen.
Thank you to our fantastic speakers, moderators, journalists, and photographers.
And last but not least, all of you for your participation as WorldLink's 2015 conference delegates. And we have one last final thank you. Thank you to Debbie Martinez, our WorldLink program officer.
As we learned today, violence takes form in many different ways, from genocide to interpersonal conflict, from the streets of Durban, South Africa, to our local high schools.
In March of 2005, an armed student went to Red Lake High School and shot a teacher, 5 students, and a security guard in a 3-minute rampage. In the course of those 3 minutes, the lives of 7 innocent individuals were lost. This is simply unacceptable.
We are gathered today to educate one another on how to identify, heal, and ultimately stop these violent occurrences from happening.
Violence can be physical, psychological, and emotional, and can occur on an international or national scale, and even in settings like homes and neighborhoods. However, one commonality that these forms have is that they are all cyclical in nature. Many abusers run victims themselves. Therefore, we as informed citizens must break this cycle.
Today, we have learned that there are many influential and inspiring people and organizations that are not just working to end violence, but are actually doing it. One way in which we can help put an end to these types of injustices is through identifying violence and its root causes. This is the first step of many to help terminate the cycle. It is through this that one can begin to work towards a gradual healing process, which may include the incorporation of art, music, and storytelling.
For others, the healing begins through transitional justice in the form of truth commissions, criminal prosecutions, or reparations. And although new, the burgeoning of restorative justice can help bring offenders and victims together to redress past abuses and move forward. If something you heard today piqued your interest, explore it, challenge it, and use it towards making your impact on our world today.
At the beginning of today's Youth Town meeting, you were asked, are you ready? So, are you ready to take action? Are you ready to make a change? This Saturday, there will be a WorldLink workshop called Conversations into Action. We will come up with new ideas and work together as a team to turn these solution-making ideas into a reality. As mentioned earlier, limited space is available, so be sure to RSVP today.
We hope that each of you leaves with the understanding that youth can make a positive impact on our world and can contribute and achieve a brighter and non-violent future. Young people truly have more power and influence than they may sometimes believe. So it is up to me,
to all of us,
to put our influence to great use. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.